All right, ready.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, record. Thank you for joining us for the
Oh,
PEBCAK Podcast.
hold on. Mine,
Did you pull
mine
a
just.
Glenn?
Well, I know to do this. It happens every time.
Hello, my friends.
Thank you for joining us for the PEBCAK Podcast, a weekly information security show featuring some all-around good people. It is week 40 of 2025. I'm Chris Louie, and having way too much fun with my SOAR invite that I got from Dan. With me, we might have my co-host, Uncle Barbecue, who is racking up the frequent flyer miles this week, and that's why he's not here. He's traveling. He said he'd try to join maybe partway through. And we also might have our other co-host, Glenn Medina, who's still recovering from surgery, but at least off the meds. Again, he said he might join us about halfway through today. Our guest this week is the returning Ben Quarrel. Ben, I'd say you've been quite busy at work the last few weeks, so I do appreciate you taking an hour out of your much-needed PTO to join us on the podcast today.
Oh, how I'm happy to be here, and I really want to see Glenn on the meds joining. And
Yeah, I think we recorded pretty late that one. It might have been like midnight or later your time if you wanted to show up for that one.
nice.
Well, combined, we still have decades of information security experience in here, not just to educate, but to entertain. We've got one awesome story for you this week, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. This week, our one big topic is we're going to be talking about the evolution of ransomware. For our first and only topic, we're going to talk about the evolution of ransomware over the last decade or so. I've studied trends, I'm sure Ben has as well, in ransomware since about 2015, and a clear shift is emerging. So we'll start with a recap of some of the major ransomware attacks and the groups that perpetuated them, including their country of allegiance. In terms of high impact incidents.
I thought you were going to say allegiance,
Allegiance.
but allegiance too.
In terms of high impact incidents that resulted in massive financial loss or attacks against critical infrastructure, I would say these are the important highlights. So starting way back, we're going to jump in the way back machine here, 2016. The original NotPetya ransomware debuts with ransomware groups CryptoWall, TeslaCrypt, and Locky. They're all Russian affiliated and very spray and pray. So I know, Ben, you were probably working in IT at the time or in security. Is that what you saw back in 2016? Just very spray and pray, just indiscriminate. Whoever can click on it, that they would be the target.
Absolutely. Like you say, a lot of prayer because there was a lot of spraying. So we did a lot of praying. And that's the thing is, the threat actors would sit out there and they just non-discriminately were everybody was a target. And if you can get somebody to click on something, they execute it. All of a sudden, they install the ransomware. You get that little screen that comes up. This is where it's going to be, cheaper. It could be like, $100 to $500 for your ransomware at that point in order to get your covered key. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes it didn't. But really, and then it would spread SMB and can go through your organization. But a lot of times it's like, why? No rhyme, nor reason, nor anything. Didn't seem like it was picked on any organization. It was very random at that time. And we were all still trying to share information on who are these threat actors, what are they going for, and even individuals. So it wasn't even businesses who were being targeted.
Right. Not just Fortune 500. It could be grandma's laptop.
No. Yeah. And grandma calls you and says, hey, I have this screen on here. What am I supposed to do? And what are these? They're asking for 3 BTC. What in the world is BTC?
I think back then they might have still accepted Western Union too, before Bitcoin became more mainstream.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. It was the Wild West, early days.
Yeah, very unorganized, very indiscriminate, very just whoever will pay, that's all the better. None. These groups weren't too affiliated. The only thing that really tied them together that they were all Russian affiliated.
Yes. In fact, if you talk about mitigation steps And how do you make sure that your machine does not get infected? One of the things that got passed around is if you had a Russian language pack installed on your system, it was not going to install ransomware on it.
That was like the vaccine.
Yes.
Ransomware vaccine. And that's due to the nature of all these groups being Russian backed, that some of these state-backed actors will look the other way and say, oh, as long as you don't attack us and you attack the West or you attack everyone else, we'll live with it.
Yes. And you sat there and said you didn't want to point fingers, but by the fact that you could do that, kind of did take it from, alleged to, that's pretty good chances.
Yeah, I have it in my notes here. I can't remember exactly where I put it, but they weren't necessarily state-backed, but they were state-tolerated. The state would tolerate their behaviors as long as, I don't know, sometimes it's like their day job to attack on behalf of the state, and then their night job is to make all this money, or just, as long as you don't bother us, we won't bother you.
Yes.
Moving on to the next year, 2017, that was the year of ransomware with the release of double pulsar eternal blue exploits from the Equation group that got leaked out of our US NSA. We saw WannaCry, that was attributed to the North Korean Lazarus group, and some people, there's still theories about that. Some people think it was leaked by accident, it wasn't ready yet. Some people said it was released just to be a destructive disk wiper, but what was intentionally released as a disk wiper was the NotPetya strain of ransomware that were Russian-backed, and later the SAMSAM attacks against U.S. cities. So if you remember, like Baltimore and Atlanta, some of the big U.S. cities out there got hit by ransomware. That was Iran, and that I would say this was a more unusual year. We saw North Korea, which typically doesn't do ransomware, and we saw Iran, that also typically does not do ransomware, but it was definitely the year where ransomware became a household name.
Yeah, and every time we start talking about Lazarus Group, it takes me back to the author, investigative journalist Jeff White, who did a fantastic series on the Lazarus Group, and I learned so much listening to that podcast. He's got a book. Maybe he'll
come on,
give us a copy. Yeah. Oh, yes.
I have. It's called is it called the Lazarus Heist? I think it's what it's called.
Heist.
Yeah,
Yes.
the Lazarus Heist. Yeah, it's like an 8-part podcast series, and then he wrote a book on it. I also listened to both and read both, and both are very good, very well researched.
Oh, fantastic information, and the level of details that it gets to, and the backstory and all of that. It's just just well done being put together. But again, how do you tie these things back? How do you figure out all of this information? And like you said, that was just a year of all of those things coming together and turning ransomware into a common term, household name, common term, whatever. And now you start having where your executives are coming and saying, what is this ransomware? Is this something we need to worry about? What are we doing to prevent it, protect, all of that? And then, of course, you have companies that started to say, we're the cure. Here's the pill. And they built their program, their solution, their entire company around preventing ransomware.
And I put in here, there were 3 M's, I remember, and this is all public information. Merck, Maersk, Mondelez all suffered collectively, billions and billions of dollars worth of losses due to this not specifically the NotPetya attack. There's another book from Andy Greenberg from Wired also wrote a book. Yep. I think it's called Sandworm, where he dove deep into the NotPetya and the Sandworm, the alleged APT that backed group that perpetuated this attack.
Another fantastic book, absolutely, and it's written. I like it. These authors that are writing books in story form that the average person, non-technical person, can read, enjoy, and understand as well.
Yeah, and even if you are super technical, it's not basic either. Like, it's good investigative journalism for sure.
Yes.
And I think that's probably one of the last times we're going to see Iran on the ransomware front was back in 2017. I think their priorities shifted a little bit. So let's jump ahead to 2020 in the midst of the global pandemic due to COVID-19. I don't know if we're going to get censored because I said COVID-19, but we'll see. But 2020, we had Sodino Kiwi, Ryuk, Revol, Darkside, Conti. Again, anyone that works in security should know these names very well, but a lot of them were Russian-backed threat actors. They hit a lot of U.S. cities, and this led to the rise of ransomware as a service business model, that you didn't just have one threat actor group that did everything: the initial access, the creating of the encryptor, the handling of the negotiations, the money laundering. That it wasn't all one company. Now they would farm this out. One company would get initial access, get in, spread this group's ransomware, and they'd get a cut of the ransom if they were paid. And that's just proves that cybercrime is now a big business. They have HR departments, they have customer service departments, they have I don't know, do they get dental? They have a dental plan.
Yeah, if you don't pay them, they're going to take out that molar. But no, like you said, I mean, this really does prove that cybercrime is big business. It's following the money.
Crime does pay, apparently.
Crime. No, all of those things, your reputation matters. And are there scruples that are out there? Some of these ransomware gangs would have terms of service for targets. And they would say in their terms of service, I've not read them, but you cannot attack schools. You cannot attack hospitals. And so, but if that did happen, and one of those organizations was targeted or was hit, because that's spray and pray, and not always understanding who you're hitting. It's just another system, another IP that was out there. Sometimes you would see that key would be given to that institution. Other times that institution was still going to have to pay to receive their key that is out there. So it's interesting, the scruples that might be there, but you don't see 100% where any of those were held as well. But it was interesting to say, do not target hospitals, do not target things. And I think that was more, if people start dying, these turning a blind eye, these governments that are turning the blind eye to it might sit there and say, no, now our citizens, again, assumptions here, now our citizens are actually being impacted, not just monetarily, but now we're going to start cracking down more on this.
Yeah, they're not charities. They don't feel bad for doing it. They strictly did it because they don't want law enforcement on their back, and this points way too much attention to them. So they said, yeah, don't hit critical infrastructure, don't hit hospitals in the middle of a pandemic, yes. Don't attack these schools that are barely getting by when they switch to remote learning. And that was more of a tactic to not draw attention, because it's like, well, manufacturing, yeah, critical, but not going to get the FBI kicking in our door or the Interpol kicking in our door.
Oh, yes. I don't think it was they were nice. I think it was a strategic decision to allow them the reach and everything that they were doing at that time as well. So yes, but again, it really does show, and that whole thing with reputation is, if you have a reputation that you're not going to follow up with a key, I paid you $3,000, I paid you $300,000. Am I going to get the key? And is it going to work? So there's also some, if you have a reputation that is not, traditionally, or 33% of the time, I can't decrypt. Well, I'm not willing to risk $300,000 more than what we've already lost to potentially get my business back up and running. And if I'm talking to my executives and I'm explaining to them we got hit, our controls, our processes, our everything have proven to be ineffective, and we got hit. Now I'm going and saying there is another option, and that is to pay a ransom and potentially get a key. Well, if we pay this, can you assure me we're going to get our data back? Well, a third of the time.
Yeah.
Whoa.
It's like hope is not a strategy.
Yes. So I think that's one more reason for this ransomware as a service. And it's a franchise model.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, franchise is a good way to put it, because if I go to my local McDonald's and it's trashed and the food is still frozen when they serve it to me, like I'm going to go complain to corporate. I'm not going to, deal with this local franchise. And the corporate's going to call up that local McDonald's and say, "What are you doing? Like I'm getting all these complaints that you're serving cold food and your place is dirty. Like clean up your act."
Yep.
Yeah, that's exactly how it works. And it, just like you said, it is a maturing business, because there's that saying, there's no honor among thieves. If I pay you the money, you're just going to run away, or you're going to ransomware me. But if I build up a reputation that says, yeah, Ryuk, they always give the key and the key always works, then the next person that gets hit by Ryuk is going to be much more likely to pay, knowing that it'll work. Like I will get what I pay for. Moving on to 2021. The year, I would call it the year of critical infrastructure. So you'll see some of these themes for some of these years. So ransomware, again, scourge of the earth, but Colonial Pipeline, that would be the big one that shut down a lot of gasoline, I should say, and oil distribution all along the West Coast. Did that affect you, Ben? Actually, were you not able to buy gas in 2021?
Oh yeah, Southeast as well. Making sure that if you're going on a trip, you took gas cans as well, because you were not sure if they were going to be servicing gas stations along I-95 and stuff around the East Coast as well. So yes.
Yeah, and that was one piece of critical infrastructure. JBS Foods, arguable. If you're a meat eater, they're one of the biggest meat processing plants here in the U.S. If I can't go to Costco and buy my T-bone steaks, I consider that critical infrastructure. You might not, but that they were taken down. They had to pay a ransom. And then Ireland's health service, their entire National Health Service of Ireland, got taken down, with DarkSide, Revil, and Conti again taking the mantle for Russia. And if 2017 was when ransomware became a common term, a household name, 2021 definitely proved it to be a turning point in ransomware, because even my real estate agent was asking me about it. It's like, hey, you work in security. What's this? We can't get gas ransomware attack.
Well, it became more real. And that's that thing, is who's a target. And used to hear, well, people aren't going to target us. We're not big enough. We're not anything. And now you're starting to see some of these. But these, as you said, critical infrastructures are now being hit. Now it's not just a theoretical thing that's on the news. I heard it on, as I was getting ready for work today. But now, do I have to change my daily life because one of the organizations that was hit is a distributor of something that allows me, living in a first world country, to have the niceties that I'm used to, whether that's gas, whether that's meat, whether that's power, whether it's back to Maersk with some of the shipping and the delays in shipping that could have been impacted longer had that persisted even longer. That was out there as well. The average person could feel this in their daily lives. So, talk about turning the corner, making it more real, household name. This was a more meaningful year as well. Therefore, even more, the executives inside organizations are like, okay, I know the executives at this company. If it can happen to them, if it can happen there, are we next? And how would we respond to this as well? So again, these are some of the things that really put cyber as a conversation, as a discussion in the boardrooms now. Not to say that they're funding it, not to say that they're always giving you
it's
all the
at least
resources.
On the agenda. We got
Yes.
5 minutes to talk about it on the agenda.
Correct. Yes. And you started to see more people getting the titles of CISO, and okay, we have a CIO and we have a director of security. Are we actually going to have somebody with clout? Are we actually going to have somebody who runs security for our organization that we can hold accountable here? We have somebody who's responsible, but do we have somebody who we can now hold accountable for these sorts of things? Because this is more prevalent and meaningful, impactful. It's hitting everyday life. So again, more conversations were had in the higher levels of echelons inside organizations.
And I remember my parents were lived through the time of the Iranian oil embargo, and I think it was in the 70s, and they were telling me that, depending on the last digit of your license plate or the last letter or number, you could only buy gas on certain days, and they had to ration gas. And I would think, at least for people in my generation, like, we never had to live through anything like that, thankfully. And until something like this happens, where some people type some keys on a keyboard, and then all of a sudden you can't buy gas in the entire southeast of the United States. It wasn't a country that was embargoing the U.S. It was some jerk that just threw out some software, and it took down our capability of shipping oil, around the U.S.
Yes. And that's the thing is, the rise of cybercrime, a couple things. Doesn't matter where you live. Geopolitical, all of the borders, national borders do not matter to cyber crimes. You can do it anonymously, and you can, whether it's coming from Russia, whether it's coming from Iran, whether it's coming from Nebraska, doesn't really matter. You can hit any country that is out there, and for the most part, you're anonymous because you can route through anywhere else, try to obfuscate, but you said earlier, getting Interpol against you, getting FBI, getting some of these governmental law enforcements after you, you have to hit a certain threshold. It has to be impact, how big and how much did it cost, whether they're going to get engaged or not. Did you hit critical infrastructure? And if you're not causing, and SEC now has, is it material? Well, if it's not material, do you have to report it? Things like that. And if you're staying underneath these sorts of things, you can stay anonymous. And not every organization reports that they had a ransomware incident, especially in 2020, even through 2022 as well.
With Colonial Pipeline, I think they paid the ransom. I want to say it was in the $40-50 million range. That eventually led to the downfall of DarkSide, which was the ransomware group that perpetuated it. And then I think later on, the FBI did like a hack back type campaign where they found the private keys to the DarkSide Bitcoin wallets. I shouldn't say they stole it back, because technically DarkSide stole it, but they recovered. I will say they recovered a lot of the Bitcoin that was paid out, and that was one of the things that these ransomware groups said: don't get too high profile, don't cause too much noise, because things like this will happen. So, DarkSide got taken down, the money got clawed back, and they were probably not better off for doing that, other than just causing a whole bunch of chaos.
Oh, absolutely. And you mentioned Andy Greenberg, and one of his books as well wrote about using Bitcoin. And as you're using Bitcoin and you put it into a wallet, all of these transactions can now be traced. So did you get it? Okay, maybe it's in a wallet, an anonymous wallet that's out there, and you have the money. But if you ever try to do anything with it, to transfer it to
launder
how it can be tracked.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's called Tracers in the Dark. Another good one.
That's the name of the book.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We should get a commission for all these books we're selling. Use my affiliate code. Fast forward to 2022, something happens in the geopolitical space. In February, Russia invades Ukraine. So now the Russian-backed groups like Conti, Lockbit 3.0, Black Basta, they're now focused on attacking Ukraine instead of the rest of the world. And, we thought this would calm down ransomware because they'd be too busy helping the motherland fight this war that they're now engaged in. I would say we didn't really see like a notable downfall in the amount of ransomware, but 2022 is also a notable year because a new player emerges in the SIM swapping space to gain initial access. And we talked about ransomware as a service. This new group called Scattered Spider was really, really good at getting initial access, and they breached a company called Twilio, and that would be the first of many for this new emerging group.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing is you talk about initial points of access. You talk about that, how do you get that initial foothold? And, we can talk about protections. We can talk about ways of mitigating, minimizes, preventing all of that. But really, the Scattered Spider changed the TTPs. And they went to, what many people believe to be that weakest link. And that would be some of that social engineering aspect, gaining credentials, gaining access, gaining, I don't have to hack in if I can log in SIM swapping, getting passwords, and then because of multi-factor that's out there, of hey, if I'm doing some SIM swapping and everybody's using SMS codes or whatever to get that second token or that second degree of authentication, that other factor, if you will, that's why they were so successful as well. And a lot of times, I will say, with multi-factor, two-factor, all of that, 99% of the world cannot, are not going to do the SIM swap, and they're not going to get around. If that's the only way that we can enable, two-factor or multi-factor was through SMS, I was like, well, then we're still moving in the right direction. We still require an attacker to do something else to get access to our organization, but they made it or showed it to be the flaw that it was with that some of that SIM swapping, and how easy they were able to get the telecom organizations to give out information as well. So yes,
they were, I would say, an emerging player, but I think they would go on to hit many organizations. I think even before we move on to 2023, there were so I think they hit some rideshare companies, they hit some video game studios, they hit some in the semiconductor manufacturing. You can look them all up. It's all public, and I would say they hit the ground with a splash. They started as initial access, and then they got a little bit more sophisticated after that.
Yeah, and again, that's just those who have reported it.
Yes, exactly.
And if we'll be conservative and say half the organizations do not report, or do not even pay to bring in a forensic firm to say that it was this threat actor group. So they could restore, they could get their backups, they could bring up all these things in and not do a forensic investigation to say who actually, can we trace this back? So yeah, I'm sure there was more than we're even aware of.
Yeah, that's a legal loophole that has to get shut at some point, because I think the thought is, if we don't look at the logs and we don't figure out who it is, we can say there's no evidence because there's no evidence because we didn't look.
Because we didn't look for it.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. But that's the thing is, you talk about legal loopholes, and who are you going to use? Do you call insurance? Do you call your insurance? May have a ransomware negotiator. Are you allowed to negotiate? We have these laws or regulations or other things that have at least been talked about of, if you pay a ransom, should it be illegal to pay that? Because you're just incentivizing these threat actor groups to continue this bad behavior.
Yeah, rewarding
if you
crime.
Pay it, yeah, absolutely. But at some point, if a person is kidnapped and a ransom is demanded, do we ever say, well, no, we would never pay that ransom? Chances of get that? No. So is it within the bounds of one government entity just sit there and tell a private business you may not pay a ransom to restore your business? We'd rather you go out of business. I mean, we get philosophical. It could be a religious battle, all of these things, but I don't know if making a different type of business decision, if I agree with outlawing or banning, taking a step to restore your business. Yeah. But again, we can have a conversation with anybody who wants to have one, whether that would be something that, right, wrong, great,
or otherwise. Yeah. All right, fast forward to 2023, Change Healthcare, where Russia-linked Alpha V/Black Cat steals the $22 million ransom paid by Change Healthcare and effectively did something called a rug pull, which means that one of their affiliates successfully did the attack. They paid the victim paid the ransom, and Alfie and Black Cat were supposed to share this ransom with the affiliate that breached it, but instead they just noped out of there, rug pulled, took all the money, disappeared, retired somewhere probably on the Black Sea with their $22 million. And I think that's probably I would say the start of the downfall of Russian-backed ransomware groups, at least being more mainstream because, like we said earlier, a lot of this is built on trust, not just trust that when I pay the money, I'll get my data back, but also trust between the affiliates and the franchise owner that if they collect the ransom, I will get my cut as an affiliate. And if that trust is broken, I'm not going to be an affiliate anymore. I don't want to get rug pulled again. So I would say that was a major shift there. And then the Scattered Spider group reemerges. They take credit for ransomwaring a popular household cleaning company and 2 hospitality companies out in Las Vegas. One paid the ransom, one refused to pay the ransom, and got hit with quite a few 100 million in charges based on that. But this, I would say 2023 is when Scattered Spider now became a household name. I think our partner CrowdStrike started making action figures of Scattered Spider. So that's how you know you made it on the threat actor scene, when CrowdStrike makes an action figure for you.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is we started to see where your insurance companies are asking you to engage with law enforcement agencies, because law enforcement agencies now have a database of decryption keys as well. So don't pay, reach out. We may be able to help you. Let us know what's going on. Give us your information. Give us your data. Tell us what happened. Give us some TTPs, IOCs, indicators of compromise, indicators of attack. And if by chance we have a decryption key for one of these threat actors, and a lot of this with that ransomware as a service now could be the same overall threat actor that was there, we'll give you the key in addition, but we are going to ask you for the information too. So a lot of things started happening around this time as well. And these larger organizations are being hit despite having well thought out security programs, funded security teams, larger teams, insightful information, seemingly the right programs in place, some of the right protections that were there as well. But that's this thing, is you only need that one entry point. You need that one that was there. And this is that Scattered Spider, again, using some of the social engineering, looking at some of the things for these organizations that were there, of calling up and saying, hey, can I get you to reset this password? Convincing that support desk person, and oh, by the way, I don't have whatever here, please disable for the next 30 minutes my multi-factor so I can get logged in. And then once I'm all logged back in, go ahead and re-enable it. And they were able to convince people as well in order to, to start these attacks before, it's just fascinating, despite all of our training, all our education, that we as humans want to be helpful. And you call up somebody and you can convince them to do these things. It's okay. Go ahead and disable this. I promise nothing bad's going to happen. But can you just help me out here? My boss is really writing me. I got to get this report in. My account's locked out. I feel I'm going to lose my job if I don't submit this in 30 minutes. And all of a sudden, enough of a probable story, and relating of, has your boss ever done this? Oh, I bet you've never fallen for this, but I'd really appreciate it if you could help me out here. Yeah. Just enough.
Send me some gift cards.
Yeah. But you give just enough of a sob story that you get that person to help you out, get on your side, and all of a sudden, the entire organization is impacted. And you could see some of the manufacturing organizations that a factory can be down for weeks as they're really trying to contain. Yeah, you can start backing up, you can start restoring, but if you haven't contained, all of that get back to business as usual's, all for naught.
Contained and evicted. To make sure the bad guys are gone.
Yes.
And as you mentioned, the thing that these 3 companies all had in common was it all started with a call to the help desk to either reset or disable multi-factor authentication. And that was enough if they were able to convince a help desk agent. When you think of your average help desk agent, are they really trained to detect these sophisticated social engineering attacks? Like, I don't know if you've ever been, Ben, but if you ever go to DEF CON, to their social engineering village, like, it is a sight to see. of these people that are professionally trained to call help desks, not just help desks, but even like a pizza chain or a hospitality chain, and say, I'm from corporate IT, I'm doing an audit. Just can you tell me what VPN do you use? What operating system you use? What browser do you use? What day does the trash get picked up? And you'll see, like, they can be really convincing. Like, I've seen one of the people that in here, they like play audio of a baby crying in the background. You put a little bit of that urgency, that sympathy from the other side that says, oh, I've got this baby crying. I just got to get this done. Can you just do it for me? And it really pulls on your heartstrings. And, unfortunately, a lot of times, like you said, people want to help. Just like I lived in a community building, and we had package theft problems because people were holding the door, letting people in. It's your human nature. You want to help out. And it's rude to slam the door on somebody, but that is 100% the thing you should do. If you don't know this person, don't let them in the building. And if I can't verify you're an employee, I should not be disabling your multi-factor authentication.
Yep. No, I loved it. And, DEF CON, I met Dave Kennedy, Trusted Sec at the time. And he created the social engineering toolkit as well. Yeah. And, very simple. You could walk through, but just some of the stories that would sit out there, get a phishing message that goes out there. Somebody clicks on that phishing message, you're in all of a sudden, or you calling up and just giving the story, and love the examples. And they're doing it on stage in front of everybody, and, calling up, a telco, and, can you reset my password? Well, you're not on the account. Well, I just got married, so I combined with my husband, and I can't believe he didn't put me as an authorized person on here. Again, just walking through, and all of a sudden, that person resets the password.
Yeah,
I'm like, no.
Yeah, and then I would say, just to close it out, to round out year 2025, we're 10 months in. Major UK, US retailers are taken offline again by those scattered spider kids. They target even things like insurance industry, aviation sector, UK automotive, transports in the UK, all deploying the Dragon Force payload. And I guess if you've been following along, you'll see a theme that in 2024 and 2025, maybe even part of 2023, we did not see a ton of Russian-backed groups, and it's mainly these scattered spider and their affiliates that are just taking over.
Yeah, and that's the thing. How are we seemingly looking as we walk through this? How are we 9 years into this and still fighting, the cyber criminals, the hackers, if you will? How are they still beating us? Yeah, that's a frustrating thing.
I wouldn't say we're chasing our tails, because we, as a security industry, we've accomplished a lot in the last 9 years. But they say the change is the only means of survival of the fittest. And we can start talking about some of the trends here that when maybe I would say circa 2021, a lot of companies didn't have good backups or backup strategies. They never tested their backups. And until, we're 5+ years into this ransomware scourge, and all these companies say, we should really up our backup game. And then the ransomware groups found out that just extorting the data wasn't enough. They'll just say, they'll blow us off and they'll just restore from backup. So that's when they moved to something called double extortion, where they steal the data. And even if they restore from backup, we still, the threat actors threaten to release that data.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, with that extortion, I go ahead and pay. So essentially, I'm paying for you to be quiet and not to go to the media, not to say, hey, Acme's been hacked. We stole 4 terabytes of their data, because now they're going to say that they deleted it. Okay. Yeah. Now I believe you, threat actor, who got into my system, stole my data, but because I paid you $100,000, I will trust you to say that you deleted the data and all of the data, all copies of said data. Yeah, but I'll trust you with that. But that reputation matters, and all of these things. So that double extortion there or double ransom with the extortion became a much more common thing as well.
Or they found out they could double dip, charge one fee to get the decryption key and charge another fee to keep quiet. So they could just essentially double their profits by doing this double extortion method.
Oh, yes. And I know of a couple cases where about 3 or 6 months later, that ransomware gang would reach back out after a ransom was paid and say, oh, we found more data. We forgot and we did not remove. Exactly. And if you pay me an additional $1 million, I will hit the 3 keys that is required to delete the rest of it.
Yeah.
So pay me a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. Just like traditional blackmail. How much is enough?
Yes. And that's some of the questionable things is we could sit here and say, do you pay $5 million for this?
Yeah.
Do you pay $20 million? And how, where does this come from? And, I've gone into meetings and we talked about, all right, this is going to be our response. This is what is there. These are the things we're allowed to say. These are the things we're not allowed to say. PR is there. Comms is there. And, people are like, okay, as a business, what are the cases where we would pay? And you'll have the chief legal officer stand up. I like lawyers. I'm not knocking on them. But the chief legal officer will stand, we'll never pay. We would never pay a ransom.
We don't negotiate with terrorists.
Yeah, absolutely. And, okay. Put that aside. What are the cases that we would? And, how would we go about this? What is our insurance policy and what is the max of the insurance? And it's amazing how some of these threat actor groups the ransom that they're asking for is the maximum amount that you are insured for. So they don't ask for $250 million.
How did they find out what those policy limits were?
Yes. So, but this is like some of the business email compromise is, they get into an email account, they compromise, they get credentials, they get in there, they look through the email that's there. They have templates, they have contracts, they have, purchase orders and stuff. So the things they start sending look very legitimate. Maybe that's how they're doing it. Who knows? Could be supply chain was also compromised somewhere, but it does make you think.
Yeah, and then the other thing that I hinted at as we were reading this out, it was another trend we're seeing is a move from profit-driven cyber criminals, all the old Russian-backed ransomware groups with the state tolerance, and now what's emerging now are people are literally kids from a very toxic group called the COM. And Scatter Spider isn't one group. It's kind of like Dread Pirate Roberts. Scatter Spider is this entity, and there are people affiliated with the COM that join this group. I think part of that is why it's going from Russian state-tolerated actors to these kids in the West is that either we caught them all because there's a lot of law enforcement action in these countries, or the sanctions are working. We've heavily sanctioned a lot of these groups like Evil Corp and other ransomware groups where it's illegal to interact financially with these groups. And that's really pushing ransomware to the West because we've already sanctioned everybody that would normally be affiliated with more of the East.
Yeah. I'm hoping or hoping it's coming down. But that's this thing is the more technology aware or technology savvy or expertise that is out there, the higher the possibility, the more people who can learn, and the availability of information. How do you exploit systems? 20 years ago, there wasn't a lot that was out there. I remember when I started studying for my CISSP, you had the Handbook for Information Security Management. That was it. Now there's boot camps everywhere. If you're looking to do nefarious things, you can find information on how to do some of these nefarious things, and how to hide yourself, how to be anonymous, how to do how to get into systems. Availability of that data is there, so you can see it in the East, you can see it in the West, going out there. But how do you do it? How do you do it right? How do you do it well? How do you hide yourself? It's sad that the information is that readily available as well.
With
It's
AI,
information.
large language models, vibe coding. There's a story that this Japanese factory worker was able to write his own ransomware in about 6 hours, knowing nothing about programming, but just using AI tools.
Yes, and I mean, I joke, but some of the presentations I give is making sure that you give your red team access to these GPTs. And there are guardrails on things like ChatGPT and Gemini and all of that. But you have Rogue GPT, you have Fish GPT, you have
Venice
Poison
AI,
GPT.
the open source
Yeah.
one. That's it's supposed to be privacy centric and open, like no censorship.
Yes, yeah, and let your team play with some of these. What can they see? What can they discern? Would you detect? How would you detect? And things like that. They're there, and play around. Be aware that they're there. Play around with them. Let your red teamers play with them. Your defenders play with them as well, and see if you would be able to detect if somebody was going there and utilizing it. But we can't shy away from it. And that's the one thing that cyber criminals are very quick to adopt new ways and new methods when they have to. They'll use the old ways as long as it's effective, but as soon as it's not effective, they shift.
Yeah.
Well, cyber defenders, by nature, if we don't understand it, we don't know how to protect it, we're not going to adopt it, we're not going to allow the organization to use it. That's where the old school of the Department of No, or this is where innovation goes to die. And no, so we have to be faster to allow organizations to adopt, but we've also got to be faster to adopt technology ourselves.
And again, change is the only means of survival.
Yes.
And I will say that my comment about pushing the ransomware to the West, it's one of those fortunate, unfortunate. It's like, fortunately, we've played whack-a-mole enough that all these kids are in the West are doing it now. Unfortunately, it's still happening. But fortunately, since they live in the West, they're primarily young kids, English speaking. They are not outside of the long reach of the law. And many, if you do a search for scattered spider arrest, you'll find dozens of people that were arrested as this. There was a story, I think last month, a kid, like a literal kid, he was 19 years old. He was 16 at the time of the attack. He turned himself in to the Las Vegas police, or maybe it was the FBI. He's like, yep, sorry, it was me. I turned myself in. Like, these people live in the US, the UK, Australia, one of the Five Eyes nations. They've been rounded up, they've been arrested, and they don't have like the legal shield that Russia used to provide, or Ukraine prior to the conflict would typically provide these threat actors. So that's the hope. We get enough of them, this will slow down or stop.
Yes.
And then I guess the last trend here, I would say that I have. I actually have two, but probably only have time for one. The initial access there. It used to be that these threat actor groups like Conti would buy 0 days. Like, 0 days are very, very expensive. They run to the millions of dollars for a true 0 day, and they would buy them because it was worth it. If I can ransom Colonial Pipeline using a 0 day, I can get a $40 million payment. That's an insane ROI. And then the ransomware groups realize, well, not everybody patches, so I'll buy this end day exploit for $5,000, because people just don't patch. We suck at patching. That's a blanket statement, but it's true. And then lastly, you don't even need to exploit anything. Exploit people. Move to social engineering.
Yeah. And that's the thing. How do you patch people? Security awareness training is one thing. People joke around about it, but the whole point of security awareness training isn't just to make people aware. It's to change behavior.
Yeah.
If it's not change behavior, it's not effective. And why do they have so much access? Principle of least privilege. It may not be popular, but we do it with buildings. I don't have access to every room inside our headquarters building. I have to have a badge to get in, and I only have access to certain rooms. Why do we give carte blanche access, for the most part, to employees on corporate networks? It's crazy.
It's like, you work in accounting. Why do you need PowerShell?
Exactly.
I'm going to get an angry letter from an accountant that says, I use PowerShell to script things.
You shouldn't be.
Or at least have guardrails on that, right? Approved scripts.
Yes, exactly.
Scripts, yeah. All right. Well, I think we've had a very good discussion. So, again, thank you, Ben, for your time. I think this was a very insightful discussion into the evolution of ransomware. Just a topic I've been kicking around in my head for a while, and some trends I've been noticing. And I'm like, I need to get another subject matter expert on the show, and we can sit down and have a good discussion on what we see as the evolution of ransomware. But that leads us to what we continue to get great comments about, which is our dad joke of the week. Dad joke of the week. This week, our guest Ben is up.
All right, keeping with our theme of ransomware, I'll throw one out here. We'll see how it lands. All right, what happens when a hard drive gets into a fight?
What's that?
It asks for a backup.
Well,
you see, I mean, I could pull that one for Brian, little WWE, WW. He still says WWF from time to time. Little tag team wrestling, but since he wasn't here, he'll have to hear that one. But I'll throw one more out for you as well. So This one's for you. So the other one is back in 2017, I used to have her girlfriend, but she ran somewhere. So now I want to cry.
All right, that's one level up from Victor's joke. Nice one. All right, to wrap things up, ransomware has evolved over the last decade. That's all we have for this week. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. You can find us on LinkedIn. Links will be in the description. Follow us on Instagram at PEBCAK Podcast. Thank you to our listeners and subscribers who rated us 5 stars in the iTunes Store and Spotify and left us a review. We appreciate you all spreading the word to help grow the show. The best way to find us is search for the PEBCAK Podcast on your favorite podcast listening app. For my guest co-host Ben Coral, I'm Chris Louie. Thanks for listening. We'll see you all next weekend. As always, have a nice day.
Appreciate it all.
Have a nice day.